So welcome everybody to the second to last event of our seminar for the seminar series. The last one will actually be the GES guest star poster session next Wednesday at this time. My understanding from Ali Toke is that they're actually going to do it as a virtual seminar. So I'm waiting for more information and we'll post that when it comes out. I'm very pleased today to introduce our speaker. Dr. Xuezhi Cang is a postdoctoral research associate in the Department of Geography and Environmental Systems. He sits in an office that's right next to, in between my lab and Matt's lab down based in Sondheim. His PhD in geography was completed at Northern Illinois University in 2021. And he also completed a master's in computer science there. And before that, he had a master's in GIS at Capital Normal University in Beijing, and that was following a Bachelor of Science in GIS at Nanjing Normal University. His dissertation title is A Warm or Cold Early Mars, Evidence from Valley Networks. So that the interpretation of geospatial analysis of networks to actually make inferences about ancient climate. His research interests include spatial modeling, digital terrain analysis, surface water hydrology, image processing, and high-performance geocomputation. Currently, he's working on mapping high-resolution streams in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and his full publication list and CV can be found at websites that were in the announcement that went out. So if anybody's interested in following up on those, we have that information available to you. I'm going to turn it over to you to go ahead and take the helm here. Thanks.
Can you guys see the slide? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Xuezhi Cang. I'm a postdoc researcher in the Geography and Environmental System Department. Welcome to my presentation. Today, I will present my research about the spatial modeling and assess the spatial association by comparing the uneven spatial distribution. In the presentation, first I will introduce myself a little bit, introduce my research work. Then I will introduce the modeling thinking in the geography. And then I will introduce a method to assess the association between the spatial layers. After I introduce this spatial analysis method, I will introduce two applications by using this method in the hydrology and geomorphology field. Although these two methods used in the geomorphology and hydrology, I think this method is also could be used in all other research fields using the spatial data. This is me. I'm from the interdisciplinary academic field, which is called Geography Information Science. It combines geography, geomatics, and computer science. In my opinion, the major work of the Geography Information Science is to trying to convert our real, continuous, and complicated world to a computational model which can be saved and processed in the computer. When I was a bachelor student, half of my courses are about the geography and geomatics, and half of them are about the computer science. My thesis project is to extract the watershed and the streams in a large area, which is called the Boyan Lake area. I used the divide and conquer methods to deal with the memory shortage problem caused by the big data. The divide and conquer method is almost all the solution for the big data problem. This is the first time I touched the big data research. When I was a master student, I implement a method which is called the simultaneous localization and mapping method. This technique does the navigation and mapping at the same time. Traditionally, we do the mapping and the navigation separately. The reason we want to do this together because sometimes we will send robots to a totally new environment, such as the Mars or some caves. So we cannot do the mapping first. Then we just let the robots do the navigation and mapping together. This research used the multi-viewed geometry, Kalman filter, and feature detection. Although it does not look like a very classic geography research, the image processing techniques, data fusion method, and mathematical modeling are also widely used in the geography and remote sensing field. During my doctoral period, I moved to the planetary science. I focus on the ancient Mars climatic condition problem. I will talk about this part at the very end of my presentation. In general, in this research, I used the Mars DEM to estimate the speed of water cycling and estimate the Mars climatic conditions in several billion years ago. Since 2021, I work with Dr. Matt Baker. I'm working on the high-resolution stream mapping project. In this project, we use the morphology-based method and the surface flow routing algorithm to extract the stream by using the high-performance computing and open source GES library. Although my thesis dissertation and research project are in the different fields, all of these has a lot of similarities. All of them use the computation and modeling thought. I know sometimes we think the modeling thought is too mathematically, but however, we use the modeling all the time, intentionally or even unintentionally. So for example, what is that Pokemon? So you may think that is the Pikachu, although the yellow fur and the texture of the Pikachu does not show here, so you can still know that is the Pikachu. Linking the shadow to a Pokemon character is the progress building a model in our brain. In the geography field, we have three types. In the geography field, we have three types of modeling. We have three types of modeling. The first, we model the real-world objects. We use the raster data or the vector data to do this work. We also model the relationship between these objects. For example, we use the dimensional extended line intersection model to model the relationship between the objects. Second, we also model the association between the layers. In the next slides, I will focus on this part. Third, we also model the interaction between or within the layers, such as the cellular automaton or the dynamic model could do this type of the work. Before I talk about the spatial analysis method, first let's talk about one basic method. This is the traditional method called linear regression. The right image here is an example of the linear regression. We have the independent variable and the dependent variable. Then we fit a line by using those sample points. The assumptions of the linear regression are the conditions we need when we use the linear regression. Although they are written in the textbook, personally I think some of them are more important than other ones. The first is the linearity. The linearity is the most important assumption. If the association between the variable is not linear, then we cannot use the linear regression. And the second one needs the variance of residual is the same with the increase of the independent variable. A lot of people think the homoscedasticity is not very important. You can see in our Sondheim hallway, we have many posters use the regression. Most of them do not meet this assumption. You can observe the variance change with the independent variable. The third one, independency and normality, are some kinds of the same thing. If the residual are independent, then based on the central limit theorem, they probably follows the normal distribution. But however, in the spatial data, they may probably not follow the normal distribution. So when we analyze the spatial data, a lot of the assumptions cannot be met. I will explain them in the next 2 slides. First, many relations in our real world are not linear. In the human geography, the urban population the urban population rank size distribution is not linear. It's not linear. So they follow the power of the exponential relation. In the hydrology, the Hexagon law is the relation between the flow length and the flow accumulation area. They also follow the power exponential relation. Also, the quadratic relation is also very common in our geography. In the ecology, the relation between the group size and foraging efficiency here is a quadratic relation. The union house pricing and the house price may also follow the quadratic relation in some areas. For this reason, we know in our geography world it's a complex system. So many relations between the variables cannot be described by the linear relation. The second challenge is the multi-collinearity. It destroys the interpretability. Let me give you an example and explain that. For example, we want to use the house size and school rating to predict the house price. However, the relation between the house size and school rating is the relation is linear. When we put the data to use the linear regression, we can have a lot of the possible coefficients. In the first two, only one variable works, and the other has zero contribution. And in the third one, the two variables works equally. And the most annoying is the last two. One variable do the negative work, so it means the higher school rating, the lower house price. This is impossible, but it's mathematically correct. That problem is caused by the multi-collinearity. A lot of spatial data is highly correlated. At a local scale, we have more severe multi-collinearity problem. So in those research using the geographically weighting regression, they also have the local multi-collinearity problem. For this reason, if we are using the linear regression or the GWR, you should be careful to deal with the multi-collinearity problem. To overcome these two problems, two shortages, I will introduce one method, which is using the variance to estimate associate. Here is the example. We have two data sets. In the left one, we have the independent data. The independent variable is the different treatments, A, B, and C. And under different treatment, we have different outcome. And the right one, we also have the similar data set. We have different treatment, and we have different outcomes. For the left one, if I tell you, I will give you the treatment A, and let you guess, what is the outcome? I think you cannot guess the correct answer because the outcome is totally random. But for the right one, if I say I give you the treatment B, you will probably guess the outcome is 10 because all the existed outcome is 10. Then we move to the variance. For the left one, the within group variance is 17.56, and the total variance is also 17.56. It means the within group variance and the total variance are very close. For the right one, the within group variance is 0, and the total variance is 17.56. The reason is, in the right one, the independent variable has a very strong relation with the dependent variable. So the independent variable could group the similar value together. Then the within group variance could be much smaller than the total variance. This is the reason why we use the variance can measure the associate. This method is published in 2010 and 2016. They call this method called Geodetector. So here is the example of how to use this method. In the research area A, we have the dependent variable and the independent variable. The dependent variable is a continuous variable. We have a lot of value in each grade. We also have the independent variable. It's a discrete variable. We have 3 classes here. So first, group the dependent variable to different group. Then we calculate the variance of, we calculate the total variance and group variance. And then we use the number of samples as the weight. The number of sample times the variance, they call this as sample sum of square within zones, or the total sum of squares. Then they use this equation to calculate the association. Let's imagine two extreme situations. If the within group variance is very similar with the total variance, then the SSW and the SST should be very close. Then the y minus a value close to 1 then equals to 0. In that case, the association is 0. If the independent variable could group a lot of the similar variable together, then the within group variance will be very small. It means the SSW will be very small. In the extreme case, it will be close to 0. Then the 1 minus 0 will be equals to 1. In this case, we have the high association. It means the association in this method, the range is from 0 to 1. 0 means no association, and 1 means the super high association. Why this method is better than the linear regression sometimes? First, it can measure the nonlinear relation. So here is the example. So we have the quadratic relation. And if we use the linear line to fit those points, we cannot catch any relation. The R square will be close to 0. But however, if we use the geodetector to measure the association, first, we classify the X by using the quantile method to 4 classes. Then we calculate the within group variance of Y. Then we calculate the total variance using the equation to calculate the correlation. We can somehow catch some of the relation. The relation for this dataset is 0.67. And secondly, here is an example for the multi-independent variable. Since we do not have the linear regression assumption here, we do not need to worry about the multi-collinearity. Let's say we have 2 independent variables. It is very common if we have the multiple independent variables. We want to know the association between the dependent variable and the independent variables. First, we can calculate the association between the dependent variable and 2 independent variables separately. Then we do the overlap. Here we do the overlap the 2 independent variables together and find the combined independent variable. Then we use using the geodetector to calculate the association between the combined independent variable and the dependent variable. In most cases, the association between the dependent variable and the combined independent variable will increase because we have more classes here. So in the original independent variable, we have 3 classes. And after we combine them together, we have 5 classes. So in these cases, each group will be smaller. So the within group variance should be also smaller. But however, this is not always true. If the association does not increase a lot, or even equals to 1 independent variable, it means one of the independent variable is redundant. So this is how this method overcome the multilinearity. This method also has some limitations. Here is the limitation of the geodetector. One is caused by the spatial distribution. The other is caused by the discretization process. I will only introduce how I overcome the first limitation today because I solved this method by using the spatial modeling method, and I solved the second limitation by using the information composition method. So if you are interested in how I solved the second one, I will provide the link for more details. So let me introduce the first limitation here. In this situation, we have 1 dependent variable and 2 controlling variables. If we use the geodetector to measure the association, then we can find the association between the dependent variable and two independent variables are the same, because red and green within group variance are the same. So only two independent variables are wrongly classified to the other group. However, the distribution, you can observe the distribution of two independent variables are totally different. The upper one has a higher spatial autocorrelation, and the lower one has a low spatial autocorrelation. I consider that the two spatial distribution represents two types of spatial pattern. In the upper one, the spatial interaction between the cells are stronger. It means the energy and materials are exchanged more often. So the same classes are connected. The lower one has some separated paths. It means the exchange of energy and materials is not very often, so they have some separated part. After we know the difference between the two patterns, we are trying to measure the difference association between the dependent variable and the two types of patterns. To solve these problems, we need to reconstruct the variance equation. Here is the original variance. It uses the differences between the sample value and the global estimator. And also, it treats every difference equally. It uses the same weight for each sample. That is the problem. So we need to solve that. First, we need to convert. We need to use the difference between the sample pairs to measure the variance, and then we need to use the interpair distance as a weight to measure the association. I call this measure called spatial association. Then in the next step, I will show how I reconstruct the original variance equation. Here is how I reconstruct the equation. The upper one here is the original variance equation. I rewrite it to the semi-variance format. Although this is called the semi-variance, it's actually as same as the variance. It converts the difference between the sample and the average to the sample pairs. So in that way, it provides a lot of the opportunities. Then we use the interpair distance as the weighting matrix, give the closer pair a higher weight, and the long distance pair a lower weight. When we use this spatial variance to replace the original variance, we can find several different things for measuring those two high resolution and low resolution patterns. In the original Geodetector method, the association between the dependent variable and two controlling factors are the same. But if you use the spatial variance, the high correlated layer could have a higher association with the dependent variable. If you are interested in the detail of this method, you can read this paper. And also I have the software on my GitHub page. You can also download the software. Then, although I use this method in the fluvial process in the following examples, this method could be also used in other physical geography or the social science. For example, you can use to do the public health research or the social economic research. Before I introduce how I apply this method on the fluvial process method, first I will introduce a little bit about how I model the surface fluvial process in my brain and why I'm interested in the surface fluvial process. Sorry. The left image is the digital elevation model. The number represents the elevations. The higher value means the higher elevations. The middle images are the flow direction of each cell. the flow direction is determined by the steepest drop direction. After we have the flow direction, we can have the flow accumulation. The number represents how many cells flow to this cell. So this is just a simple and basic model in my brain for the DM fluvial process. Why I interested in modeling fluid process? Because it's an instance of spatial process in the human and the physical world. The pattern represents a lot of the spatial process. The flow direction and accumulation has a clear dendritic structure. You can imagine if you have a stream, then most of the stream has the tree structure. The tree structure can be also found in the social network and the ecological system. Also in the computation, in the computer science field, the tree is also the basic structure of a lot of the algorithm. So the tree model actually links the geography field and the computation. Second, the flow direction and accumulation combine the chance and the necessity. This is, for example, if the flow accumulation is low, you can find the flow direction has more randomness. If the accumulation is high, you can find the flow direction, or most of flow direction flow to the same direction. You can also observe this type of thing in the social science. The individual could have some random behaviors, but the group have the deterministic behaviors. The third, the flow direction has a strong accumulation and form a long tail distribution, which is also very common in the other geography research. So based on these three reasons, I think that modeling the fluvial process by using the digital elevation model is a good practice to investigate the spatial process. So here I will introduce my first application. In this research, we investigate the association between the dissection density and the controlling factor. Previously, a lot of study found the controlling factor, the drainage density often find contradictory result regarding factor controlling its spatial variance. We hypothesize that the dominated controlling factor are different in different regions because of the spatial heterogeneity. To test this hypothesis, we apply a spatial analysis to the 8 physiographic divisions in the lower 48 states and identify the controlling factor with drainage density in each division. So here is the image for the data. So we have the lower 48 states US, and this is the eight divisions, and the cells are the drainage density. We are investigating the correlation between the drainage density and the controlling factor. We calculate the association between the drainage density and the environmental factors in each region and figure out which factor is the controlling factor in its division. And here is the example of the result in the interval highlight. The PSMD here is the association assessed by my new spatial analysis method, and the PD is association assessed by the Geodetector. So let me explain the result. One observation is that you can find the association measured by the space is always greater than the association measured by the Geodetector. This is because the spatial data has strong correlation. So the within group variance is almost and always smaller than the within group variance for the random data. So our point is not to compare the values difference between these two methods. Our point is to find the difference of their ranking. Using the two methods, we can say the probability is the ROGK is the probability are the most important controlling factors in this region. The speed thinks the porosity, this one, the second one, is the second important controlling factor. It could be caused by the porosity layer has a higher spatial autocorrelation, so it provides more opportunity to further the research. And then I will introduce the second application, which I used my spatial analysis on the research of the ancient Mars climatic conditions. So now we know Mars is very dry today. We cannot find the surface flowing water on the Mars. But however, Mars had flowing water several billion years ago. Here is the example. We can see that Mars has some valley networks. So it means several billion years ago, Mars has the surface flowing water. There is another question about how the duration of the flowing water. Some of the research think it's just several hundred years, and some research think the flowing water could exist in a billion years. To investigate this research problem, they use the properties of the valley network. For example, they can use the watershed, they can use the size of watershed, the stream order, and stream length, stream depth, and a lot of the probabilities of valley networks. There is one problem. As you can see, the Mars has a lot of the craters, and those craters destroy the valley networks. It separates the valley networks to the separate part. So it's very hard to figure out the boundary of the watershed, and also very hard to figure out which valley networks belongs to the same one. So for this reason, I choose the junction angle to do this work. Because first, junction angle is the fingerprint of the stream formation. Also, it's less influenced by the crater impacting. Let's say after the valley network formed, the crater could destroy the valley network, but cannot change the valley network's value. Also, based on some tests, we find the junction angle are not influenced by the statistical unit, which means we do not need to find the boundary of the watershed. We can just use a large rectangle box to do the Zuna statistics. In this research, here is the general approach of this research. We first build the relation between the Earth junction angle and Earth climatic conditions. We built a black box predictor by using the junction angle and climatic conditions. Then we apply this model to the Mars junction angle to estimate the Mars ancient climatic condition. But however, we have one problem before we build that model, because we know the junction angle is the fingerprint of the stream formation. The stream formation is not only influenced by the climatic condition, it could also influenced by the geological conditions. So we first need to know whether the climatic conditions play the majority role to form the junction angle. For this reason, we use our spatial analysis method, SPADE, to investigate the association between the junction angle and many controlling factors. The result found, in most cases, the arity index and mean annual precipitation plays the majority role. So it gave us the confidence to build this black box model and use this model to estimate the Mars ancient climatic conditions. So this result shows the wet period in the Mars has more than 50. The wet period on the Mars had the ancient Mars had about 1 1 million years wet and warm period. So what is the message we need to take away? Spatial modeling is very important in all types of the geographic research. Since the spatial process happens all the time, we need to consider the nonlinear relation and multi-collinearity in analyzing spatial data. In building the new spatial analysis method, I invented the spatial variance, which converts the sample versus global estimator to a sample versus sample estimator and use the distance as weight. I call it variance as spatial variance. This method could also provide a lot of potentials in other research. Other research could also use the distance, angle, or even the data's value as the weight in their further research. So I think it is a good method and deserve a try. If you have any questions, you can contact me via my email or find me in the basement and in the Thunderheim Hall. Thank you.
Thanks, Xuezhi. That was really interesting. I'm going to start with a question, but I'm going to ask others if you're interested to just make a mention in the chat that you'd like to ask a question, and we'll call on you. So you mentioned the reason why junction angle was preferable to using some other metrics because for the Mars study because of the influence of craters on disrupting the watershed boundary. But could you just elaborate a little bit on what it is about the junction angle that's diagnostic in a way that's useful for this analysis? What does junction angle actually tell you?
Okay, so in the previous research, so the people think the larger junction angle, so the whiter environment. So this is but those people does not consider the geologic process, and they only investigate the junction angle. They only investigate the correlation between the junction angle and the aridity index in some very wet area in the Florida. So this gave me some interest in how to apply those theories to the Mars part. So this is the reason I use the junction angle to build this model.
The junction angle, if you do not have other controlling factors related to underlying geology, there's a correlation between the magnitude of the junction angle and the wetness of the climate. That's what you're saying.
Yes, because we think we have sometimes we can observe a lot of the right angle of the junction angle. Those type of the junction angle is created by fault or the other lithology situation. So we do not, although we know we have this situation, but we do not know how many times we can see this type of situation, and we do not know whether the lithology could also influence the junction angle in other situations. So for this reason, I run this test to see the influence of the geological factor and the climatic factor to the junction angle. So this is why I run this test. And this test tells me the aridity index actually has a much stronger controlling power to the junction angle. So it gave me the confidence to build the to build a model. Here I use the k-nearest neighbor model to use the junction angle to predict to estimate the aridity index and mean annual precipitation on the Mars.
So in a situation, for example, where you have particular joint patterns, let's say in a landscape, that might have more of an influence on the way the drainage lines are oriented with respect to one another, that might be more of a controlling factor in that situation. On Mars, obviously, you have to make inferences about lithology based on only visual information, since we don't have We don't yet have samples that have been brought back, although we have a general idea of probably what it's made of. But has this been tested on Earth in places where we do have that information, other than the situation you described in Florida, like with places with very different geologies?
In that area, that is small area. So I think the underlying is very homogeneous. So they do not consider the lithology problem.
Mhm. Okay, thanks. Well, I invite other people to go ahead and raise questions. Matt Fagan.
Question. That was fascinating, and so I had a question that Andy asked a good question, and so I thought I would follow up on it. In areas where you've seen drying out of networks, like for example in the Sahara, where you know kind of precisely when the water stopped flowing, um, I'm wondering if this would be an interesting application to sort of look and kind of test your method. But just kind of, I'm wondering, because I think that'd be really interesting to look at areas where we know water has stopped flowing at different times in different deserts around the world. Um, and secondly, so you can't tease apart the kind of correlations between the variables necessarily independently, correct? Is that in your spade method?
Let me say the first question. The first
Oh,
question.
yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, let me answer the first question. So the when I say I predict the climate condition, it's not like the weather forecast. So it's has a high accuracy data, because when we do some research on the Mars, so actually we are just to get a rough value. We don't have to get a very accurate value, because this is the geological time. So thousands of years or hundreds of years is it's not influence the final result. So and for the Earth, we have some area you can see it's originally white, and then it turns to the arid area. So how the junction angle and then the river dried, the junction angle does not correlate it to that local climatic condition. So that situation exists. But in this research, we used a very large area. We used the lower 48 of the US to build the correlation. So we consider that the junction angle and the average situation of the climatic condition have some correlations.
That makes sense, and you probably need a pretty good digital elevation model to do this properly. So the lower 48 would be the place with the most information.
Yes. And for your second question, so if you have the multiple independent variable, you can still have the correlation. So you can overlap them together and calculate the combined independent variable with the dependent variable. But you will not have the efficient of in the linear regression to see which variable contributes to see the contribution of the individual independent variable.
So when you're calculating the semivariance, right? That's between the predictor variable pattern and the response variable pattern. Is that correct?
No, when I use the semivariance, it only use the dependent variable. So
Okay.
the controlling factors work is just to divide the dependent variable to several groups. Then we calculate the variance in each groups and compare the within group variance with the total variance.
So this works. How many dependent variables could this work with in reality?
One dependent variable. We only have one dependent variable.
Sorry, I have other thoughts. I think I need to think of this a bit more. I had a thought, but I'm gonna sit on it and probably write you an email about it.
Oh, I think you may solve this. Here is the called semi-variance. Let's see. So here is the basic structure of the geodetector and spade. So when we talk about the spatial variance, so this equation actually is just this sigma part. So we calculate the total spatial variance and the sum of the within group variance to calculate the correlation.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I had a thought about expanding this to more than one dependent variable, but I'm gonna think about it for a bit. My other thought is that, have you talked to Ron Wilson about this?
I haven't.
I think you and Ron should have a conversation, at least a beer. I think he would love to talk to you about this. This is right up his alley.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Is he teaching his classes here live now?
Don't know.
I'm only asking because it might be physically possible to actually see him if he's doing it on campus.
Yeah, I've been teaching on campus. I've seen him in the evenings. He's actually walked by Xuezhi and I while we've been in the office.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Dan, I guess, is in that class, and so so does anybody else have any questions they want to ask? So while we're waiting to see if anybody else does, I'm going to throw one out one more, and this is maybe because I'm just not sure I understand how you can make this inference. But did I hear you say that the conclusion was that the wet period on Mars lasted something on the order of about 1 million years?
Yes.
So what was the range of at first you said it could have been as short possibly as a few centuries. So it's, even though I understand you can make that inference based on what you learned from junction angles, I'm still not entirely clear on how that inference is drawn to actually associate it with the rate of wetness. And 1 million years sounds long to a lot of people, but on a whole planet, it's a very short period, even though it's not as short as centuries. So I'm just curious how you get from point A to point B in terms of arriving at that conclusion.
Yes. Oh, there is argument for the ancient Mars climatic condition. So Mars basically has the 3 geologic periods. One is called the Noachian period. So in the Noachian period, we have the flowing surface water, and then the Mars is dry. And sometimes some researchers think the Mars has surface flowing water after the Noachian period, but most think after the Noachian period, the Mars is just a dry area. So in the Noachian period, so we can find those valley networks, but there is still some discussion for how the valley networks were formed. Some of think even in the Noachian period, so Mars is still a very cold planet, and a lot of the area of Mars is covered by the ice, or just a totally dry area. And someone think at that time Mars could have the flowing water, and the water cycling speed is much higher than we think. So this is the two types of the idea for the ancient Mars climatic conditions. When I use the junction angle, so I'm trying to estimate the mean annual precipitation as the Variety index to estimate the climatic conditions of the Mars. So we use the Earth data to build this model, and then use the Mars junction angle to predict the Mars Variety index as the Mars annual precipitation in several billion years ago. So the result is we can find, I remember the Variety index for the ancient Mars is about the 0.3 to 0.5. It's the semi-arid areas compared to the Earth. And also we can have the mean annual precipitation. So with the DM data, we also can extract those Mars valley network volume. Then we know the volume of the valley networks. We can do a not very complicated model, but a simply model to calculate the how many years we can have, how many years we should have to erode all of these materials out of the valley network. So this is how I estimate how I use the climatic condition to estimate the wet and warm period.
So if I understand you correctly, then that's the junction angle are giving you the climatic conditions for which you can generate a mean annual rainfall, and then the volume of the channel network gives you, based on the mean annual rainfall, and I guess some assumptions you have to make about erodibility, it gives you the amount of time it would take to create that drainage network.
Yes.
Okay, so is there any evidence from these? So that's a very interesting image that you've got in the figure there, and it shows impact craters that have clearly impinged on parts of that drainage network. Do we see any evidence of places where there are drainage networks that have been impinged on by impact craters and then renewed drainage network extension into the impact crater areas? Like, could there have been more than one episode, or is it thought to be just one episode of time? Because that seems like if Mars lost a large part of its atmosphere and a large part of its water vapor many, billions of years ago, but that seems like a short time to even have it available to interact on this surface here. That's the thing I'm trying to understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would it just be a period that short? I would tend to think it would have been that way for some period of time, and then you gradually lost it. And so I'm just curious about how you think about that.
Thank you. Oh, this is also a lot of research for why the Mars loses water.
Mhm. Okay, well, this is very interesting to me, but I'm going to just again ask if anybody else wants to pose questions.
I have a question about the first application. You have the map of the lower 28. Yeah. I hadn't, this is a new map for me. Is that your output showing your output data from you're doing this process, your application?
Pardon me, sorry.
Oh, I'm just wondering if that map's showing your results, or is that like going into your processing?
Oh, this is the dependent variable. It will go into the process.
Okay.
So here is just want to show you what is the drainage density looks like.
So I guess I'm thinking that's so much data. What tool did you use to do this, to process all of that, and how long did it take?
Oh, the data is not a lot. For example, we see in the region 3, we have about the 2,000 sample. This is 2,000 sample. So even in the 4, I think we can have less than 10,000 sample, or maybe 100,000 sample. So the sample size is not really a big challenge. So
Okay.
this is now we don't have the big data problem for this research.
I thought we were working on pixel size. It looked like a pixel
Yes,
size.
this is the pixel size.
Oh, okay.
But the resolution is very low. You see, here the resolution is about 4 kilometer.
Oh, okay.
So the resolution is low, so we don't have a lot of data.
Oh, got it. Thank you for explaining that.
So I'm going to ask one last question, just follow up on that quick. What was the did you mention what the resolution was for your Mars DEM? Because the image you showed is very high resolution, it looks like.
Yes. You mean this image? Why use the for the Mars research, the resolution is about the 400 kilometer per cell. No, sorry, 400 meters per cell. So I use this image because
It's the drainage network.
yeah,
So that's actually okay.
Yeah. I use this image because I want to show you how the Mars Valley networks looks like. So normally when people talk about the Mars Valley network, you will always see this picture. It shows you a very clear drainage density of the valley network. And also in a lot of the valley network system of Mars, the valley network is not very clear. It's interacted with the crater as the volcano channel and other things, other chaos things. So here, this image is just to show you how the Mars Valley networks looks like.
I see. Well, thanks for a very interesting presentation. We are just about not quite at 1 p.m. I think, so I have to go to classes or to other meetings. So really appreciate this. I was through a little more details, so we really appreciate it. I'm now that I know a little bit more about this work, I guess I will have to come down
Thank you for having me.
in person for other days. So, all right, thanks a lot. I'm going to end the recording now.